Over here!
Baldur's Gate 2, Neverwinter Nights, Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, Jade Empire, Dragon Age, Mass Effect, Dragon Age 2, Mass Effect 2, Mass Effect 3, Dragon Age 3, Mass Effect Andromeda. Those are all the major single-player RPGs BioWare has produced. BioWare has made 3 major forays into multiplayer: Warhammer Online, Wrath of Heroes, Command & Conquer Generals 2, Star Wars The Old Republic MMO. The former 2 were cancelled embarrassingly. The latter cost millions and millions of dollars, and no one is really sure to this very day if it's made any profit for the studio. Although some of BioWare's single-player games had LAN co-op or an online horde mode or something like that, none of them had a large multiplayer focus. BioWare has historically been a story-driven game developer with a focus on slow, 40-plus hour action RPG games. They have a limited experience making big, content-rich, mechanically diverse games. EA has shown since 2013 it's willing to cull BioWare projects and scale them back whenever they're not meeting performance goals. BioWare has a track record of not being successful with multiplayer endeavors. Warframe, Path of Exile, Diablo 3. If you're playing these games in 2018, then you're not leaving them. Path of Exile and Warframe have frequent updates, and they encourage you to make new characters and develop new play styles, and the new content they generate gives new context to the old content. There's so much coding and so much artwork thrown into these games over years and years and years. There's a huge community for each of them. If you're still playing them today, you're invested in them. And if you're still playing Diablo 3, then you're pretty stubborn, and you're probably going to keep playing Diablo 3. I just don't see you tiring of these games. Never mind some of the older action RPGs, which are still playable to this day. You can still... It's not like in the case of Destiny 2, where they shut down Destiny 1 and forced everyone to leave. You can't force these people to leave these existing games that are still being played today and have so many years of work put into them. Yes, EA wants to make a live service, and they think they can make a bunch of these to make a lot of money, but live services, every time Path of Exile makes a new league, I have to devote at least a few hours a week to playing it. So it leaves me a lot less room to try out these other games that want me to invest hours and hours every week playing them. I would much prefer a BioWare game I can sit down and beat once. That's just how it's going to be for me anyway. If you were targeting me, that's what you should try to do. And while you might be able to argue that the Destiny 2 crowd could hop onto Anthem because Destiny 2 was a steaming pile of crap and didn't go anywhere, and quickly went downhill to the point where very few people are playing it today, it's true that whole audience might be able to jump onto Anthem in February. That remains to be seen. Anthem is a new IP. Part of the reason why Destiny 2 got as big as it did is because it had a huge marketing campaign for a sustained period of time, a campaign that EA is going to have to replicate and start executing right now. But on top of that, there was a large original following to Destiny 1, and Anthem is a new IP, so it's going to be an uphill battle getting people to recognize Anthem and be like, oh, that's just like Destiny, except it's clearly going to be good this time, right? That's the kind of thinking they're going to have to give these people. But the point is this genre, this action RPG or online shooter, kill things and get items kind of genre, however you want to classify it, whether it's Diablo or whether it's Destiny or somewhere in between, it's pretty saturated, and it's saturated with pretty high quality competition, and it's going to be very hard to get these players who are very entrenched in all of these series to not only give your game a try, which isn't a free-to-play game, by the way. They're going to have to give it a try, and they're going to have to want to stick with it. That seems to me to be a very uphill battle. Just a quick apology for the Vampire and Warframe gameplay footage. I just haven't played these in a long enough time that I'm literally just jumping into them to grab clip footage, and it's playing very poorly, so just ignore that. So very poor leadership can be broken down into a couple different aspects. One of the aspects I'd like to lead on with is BioWare moving away from the single-player RPG in general. You can see a lot of their comments in early 2011, 2012, targeting the Call of Duty audience is something that they said they were trying to do with games like Dragon Age 2 and Mass Effect 2. And in general, they made claims that it's very expensive to make games now, and that RPGs don't make enough money. But I would rather point that to the lofty expectations of the parent company, saying, you have to make one game every year, and that one game has to make $500 million. And that's an extremely challenging thing to do. As we saw with Dragon Age 2, a year's dev cycle doesn't leave you enough time to make an RPG. It's just not possible. And if you're going to allow a company like BioWare to have a 2 or 3 year dev cycle, the EA is expecting, a $1.5 billion return on investment, something ridiculous like that, right? Like they just see it as a linear kind of thing. And they just, and people at the top in the management positions, they might have some realistic idea of what it's like to make a video game, but they still have financial pressures above them that dictate the goals and the margins. And as a result, the leadership is saying, okay, we're going to make one game every 3 years or 5 years, and we're just going to try and get as much money out of it as humanly possible. And that just isn't sustainable. But if you look at companies that are making games like Vampire, which are like middle tier RPGs with smaller dev teams and smaller scope, you'll see not only are they making better games, in fact, this particular team has made some atrocious role-playing games, some games I would never touch with a 50-foot pole, and yet they have finally matured enough as a company to make a game like Vampire, which has a fairly decent story. It's got fairly decent production values, although as you'll see, the graphics are a little bit muddy on my machine. They're doing their best, and the action combat, I suck at it in this clip, but previously when I was playing it more, I was really good at it, and it felt like, oh yes, I've mastered the combat. I'm doing fairly well. This is interesting. This is good. This is the kind of game BioWare was making 5 or 10 years ago, and this is the kind of game that they could be making with 3 teams making 3 games at once. Instead, they're choosing to make one game every 3 to 5 years, and that is poor leadership. The effects of this lack of leadership can be seen in how BioWare is failing miserably to put a proper tone on what's going on with their game. This game is coming out in February, and they have yet to explain to us what it's about, why we should care, and what is the monetization strategy here. There's no media push. There's no one having interviews. There's a huge negative cloud floating over this game, and BioWare, instead of projecting confidence, showing us gameplay, showing us things about the game we could be excited about, showing us characters, giving us glimpses into the story, giving us characters for us to care about. Instead they're fighting the little bit of information they're trying to keep hidden. We're saying, hey, BioWare, what's up? There's no companion characters. There's no story. We're only allowed to have story when we go back to the hub. The rest of the game is just static. What's up with that? And they're trying to spin that story. Instead, they're not showing us the intent behind the game. If the game is not going to be like a traditional BioWare one, just come out and show it. Just make a good trailer. Show what it's supposed to be about. The fact that there's no one leading this ship, showing us the intent behind us, trying to get us excited for what its vision is. I mean, it just shows there never was a vision. There never was any leadership. This was just somebody's idea. Hey, let's copy Destiny because Destiny makes money, because we can put loot boxes in it, and gee, isn't that great? We could do a real money auction house. And that's probably the thought process that went into making this game. There was no leadership. There was no vision. There was no design document. There wasn't any passion. That's poor leadership, and it's another nail in the coffin for this game and for BioWare in general. Anyway, I was going to go into more detail and provide 3 additional reasons that I've written out here about why this game is going to kill BioWare, but I think 10 minutes of rambling is more than enough for the average person of me. And to summarize, BioWare hasn't shown any history of making any good multiplayer games, and when you look at their single-player games and you look at their itemization, just go to the Dragon Age 2 wiki or the Mass Effect wiki and just look at the items they put in their games. How are we supposed to be excited about an item-based loot game when they can't even get the design right of their items? I mean, go all the way back to Baldur's Gate 2, and you'll realize, oh my god, there's a couple of these overpowered items you can get early on, and then the rest of the items you get in Baldur's Gate don't even matter, right? I mean, that's fine for a single player experience, but when you look at the muted, bland, boring itemization in Dragon Age 2 or Dragon Age 3, and the quests in Dragon Age 3, they're like, collect 10 meat and 10 wolf pelts. You know, that kind of design is just insulting. And I was going to go into that in more detail, but yeah, in summary, BioWare doesn't have a chance because EA has started culling and clipping their wings year in and year out. They're closing studios. They're putting pressure. I mean, just go to the Glassdoor pages for any of their studios. Just read the comments there. That's really all you need to see. BioWare hasn't made a money-making cash cow in years. In fact, I question whether they ever have it with EA. They've made some okay hits. Dragon Age and Mass Effect made some money, but they didn't make the money EA wants to make. BioWare is not the company EA wants. So I think that if this game does not do well, and the purpose of this video overall is just as a tombstone marker. It's me putting my foot down and saying I am predicting we will not see BioWare come 2020. Come 2020, BioWare will be dissolved. They may linger around with SWTOR, you know, Ghost Skeleton Crew maintaining that game so it can continue to make some measly amount of money, but the rest of the studio will be gone. We will not see another BioWare game, and it will be the end of their history. That's what I'm predicting with this video. And the whole reason for it is just to say this is definitely going to happen. There is no way Anthem is going to succeed. They do not feel confident about it, and if they don't feel confident, why should we? Not that I want BioWare to die. I mean, I happen to be a fan of their older games, but I just want to call it because I've called other games companies coming undone, and for this time I want to be on record when it happens, okay?